Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective, the show where we explore topics, try to understand them. We're all students of the philosophy of Ayn Rand, objectivism. But remember that fact. We're students. Nothing we say should probably be taken as a definitive statement by any of us, I think, let alone a statement on behalf of a philosophy like objectivism. So take all of that, keep all of that in mind as we jump into this highly controversial topic among many people. Why would a radical capitalist not want anything to do with the Libertarian Party? Good question. It's an easy one to sort of dogmatically kind of regurgitate what you've heard, but to actually understand it, my understanding of it is that Ayn Rand saw the Libertarian Party as like capitalism minus its intellectual justification, which she saw as catastrophic. So it's kind of hard sometimes, at least for me, to kind of wrap my mind around that. Like, what would be so bad about just having capitalism in politics without having the intellectual justification? What can go wrong? Well, I guess I like to look at maybe South America. A lot of those countries, or some of them, they go from being very capitalist or close to it to over to crazy socialism. They swing back and forth. Some of their capitalists are dictators, like capitalist governments are dictatorships, throwing people out of helicopters and stuff like that. But I mean, most significantly, I think, is the swing between the two in South America. When you don't have a philosophical grounding of your politics, your days are numbered. So that's one aspect of it. But believe me, I can't do this alone. We got not one, but two co-hosts here today. One of them is a guy who, boy, does he know capitalism. He deals with capital in his life. And he's also, like myself and like our third co-host, a bit of a loudmouth for what he believes. And we respect that. Chicago's very own Jonathan Honig.
Hey, Rucka. Great to be with you this afternoon. And thanks to the Ayn Rand Center UK for having me.
And of course, the man, the myth, the guy who he's not even from America, but then again, we're not broadcasting out of the Ayn Rand Center America. We're broadcasting out of the Ayn Rand Center UK, which is exactly where he is. Greece's very own Nikos Sotirakopoulos.
Thank you, Rucka. Hi, everyone. So the Libertarian Party, I'm going to throw some things on the table and then we will evaluate. I'm not going even to focus so much on the early, let's say, Rothbard times period when Rand was not happy with the party. I'm going to focus more on how the Libertarian Party is today. Because we could say, well, whatever happened back then, What about the party today? But please, both of you, feel free to also talk a bit more about the party historically. So today, the party is mostly, let's say, divided in two parts. The one is the so-called, because these people literally call themselves like that, the pragmatists, and the other party is the so-called the Mises caucus, not having to do something with the Mises Institute, although it has people who are sympathetic to it. So we have one strand, let's say, which is the majority of more mainstream libertarians, and maybe a way to personify this trend was the previous campaign with Gary Johnson and William Weld, which it was not a successful one. Let's put it this way. So you had the two worst candidates in the history of US politics, and yet somehow Gary Johnson only made the news when he couldn't remember what Aleppo was, and the Libertarian Party made the news with the naked guy in their conference, if you remember. But I don't want to hit to these, let's say, cheap points. There is some essence why the pragmatism of Libertarian Party is not something to celebrate. Because it's based on this, first of all, ultra boring approach that says, well, some things are good on the right, some goods are good on the left. We take the good things from the right, and we take the good things from the left, and probably you're asleep by now. So this was the Libertarian Party in 2016. So since then, they've moved a bit more to what some people have characterized more towards a liberal left libertarian stance, but who knows whether this is the case. So for example, in 2018, they weren't happy with Ron Paul or with Judge Napolitano speaking in their convention. Or we saw some months ago, the candidate who is at the moment the party's presidential candidate, Joe Jorgensen, tweeting, "It's not enough to be passively not racist. We must be actively anti-racist. Hashtag Black Lives Matter." So this is the situation then with the Libertarian Party. And, it's a party, it's a bureaucratic organization. People say that their conferences are soul destroying because of the bureaucracy, the inner proceedings, the pragmatists versus the more left libertarians versus the Mises people. So that's, let's say, the surface. That's, to use Marxist term, the superstructure. But now I will get to you to tell me what is below the superstructure and what is the basis that explains these failures in superstructure, or these things that we find uninspiring or ridiculous or not as good as they should be, depending on what take you want with the party. So who wants to start?
Well, I have a question for you. You just quoted, was it Joe Jorgensen saying it's not enough to be non-racist, you have to be actively anti-racist, hashtag Black Lives Matter. So on the in of itself, that doesn't sound like the end of the world. I mean, it's kind of true. Obviously, it has connotations in.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring. It is.
So maybe not everyone understands why you're
right,
so.
Okay, so why am I saying this?
Mm-hmm.
It is positioning itself that we are not anymore the party of these, let's say, Southerner, paleo-libertarians. So in a way, they want to get maybe rid of this stigma or this identity of the party, of the Rothbardians or of the paleo-libertarians. And let me remind you one more thing, and you judge it the way you want to judge it. In the previous campaign, when Gary Johnson was asked on the famous bake the cake controversy, I'm not sure if it was particularly the bake the cake case, but it was the case on whether a private company has the right to discriminate against someone for any reason. And he says, no, they shouldn't do that. And I'm not going to be the one who's going to make the Libertarian Party that party who says that you should be free to say, I'm not going to bake the cake for you. So you can make whatever you want of these things, but they do give the identity that the Libertarian Party, its majoritarian mainstream view, wants to take as what it shows to the world.
So I'm dwelling on this because it's a little unclear to me, and probably to some of the audience. You brought up Joe Jorgensen saying we need to be actively anti-racist, and the significance of that is that it's rebranding away from the hillbilly libertarian over to the cosmopolitan. I thought maybe you were bringing it up because it's that she's giving the moral high ground to this organization, BLM, and then later she corrected it. She said, I didn't mean that. I only meant literally that.
So as you can understand, this tweet created a storm, and then she said, Black Lives Matter means standing in solidarity with the mourning Black community, by way of bit of collectivism there. But anyway, as we fight together to end qualified immunity, police brutality, sentencing disparities, and the war on drugs, not support of any quote organization by that name. So again, you make what you want.
I just wanted to be clear, just because if people, they don't understand the context and they just hear you quoting that tweet, hashtag Black Lives Matter, then they hear Jonathan groaning about it. Maybe we want to let people know kind of what the groan is about. So I think.
Well,
go ahead.
It's definitely not that we are not for Black Lives Matter. It is that when the tweet came out, there was a particular context going on. And I think she wanted to, as you said, position herself in a particular way. But let's hear what Jonathan has to say.
Please.
How often do we say, guys, Ayn Rand saw this? She was prophetic. And the Libertarian Party is just another example. I'll quote Ayn Rand. This is from, I believe, 1972. She was asked, libertarians advocate the politics you do, so why are you opposed to the Libertarian Party? Rand answers, they're not defenders of capitalism. They're a group of publicity seekers who rush into politics prematurely because they allegedly want to educate people through a political campaign, which can't be done. And that has not changed. I mean, look, today people, and often, I'm sure we're all associated with this. people might hear we're interested in Ayn Rand, and people say, "Oh, well, you're a libertarian." You know, people roundly call themselves libertarian these days. You know, i.e., more liberty. But to associate yourself with what is it, Jill Jorgensen, to associate yourself with these losers, these fucking losers, is honestly, I'll say that, Rucka. I'll go there. Let's go to the tape. Let me share my screen. You tell me, you want to be a part of this? Where's my?
Oh wow!
Please don't show us the naked guy.
No, I have to show you it. You want to?
I've never seen Joe Jorgensen with such a pretty beard.
You want to be a part of this group? This is the Libertarian. Can you see this, Nikos?
I tried to forget it, but yes, I can see.
This is from 2016. I wish I could say this was 20 years ago. This is friggin' fucking disgusting. I mean, who are these freak shows?
It was a strange time for all of us, Jonathan.
No, it's a friggin' freak show. I mean,
his tattoo is what troubles me. It looks like an iron cross on his right arm.
I mean, this is friggin', it's disgusting. Let me stop sharing this.
By the way, let me say something on this video. There's a small detail. Why this is even more ridiculous? Because I think C-SPAN was live streaming. I think C-SPAN was live streaming this conference. So it was the one moment that the Libertarian had to say, look, it's Hillary, Trump, but we offer something different. And that's what has stuck to all people from 2016.
But let me just finish, and I'll make it quick. I mean, Nikos, I wish I could say that was just 2016. This is some reporting from 2012 from the Weekly Standard, which you think would be just a little bit sympathetic to the libertarian movement. Maybe not, given their review of Ayn Rand, or not their review of Ayn Rand, but just their history. But they said that the 2012 convention, activists were, quote, selling copper barter or trade coins with marijuana leaves imprinted on them. Conference attendees included Star Child, a well-known San Francisco sex worker. I mean, Ayn Rand was opposed to the libertarian movement over time, and for, I think, good reason. It's this, once again, this anything goes. She called them hippies of the right, and I think it's very much the case. And what it quickly devolves into is anarchism. Anarchism is disgusting. Anarchism is what we see on the streets of Portland. It's this idea of anything goes, might equals right. So, I run away from the Libertarian Party. And I think there's a wanting for a shortcut here, Nikos. There's once again the sense that if we just got the right politicians in there, we would have this utopia. But we can't have the right politicians without the right ideas. So, Ryan talked about the libertarians hijacking her ideas. I think they do that, but they do it and then they urinate on them at the same time. So run away from the libertarian movement and instead donate to the Ayn Rand Center UK, donate to the Ayn Rand Center, donate to the Prometheus Foundation, donate to the organizations that are actually helping young people make smart choices for their lives.
And when we say donate to Ayn Rand Center UK, we mean become a paid member.
You got it.
So, okay, can I say one? So I don't agree that there can't be an educational political campaign. So I did the show on Friday evaluating the two Ron Paul campaigns, the pros and the cons. But I see a bigger problem here. I'm not even sure what the ideology of the Libertarian Party is. So again,
it's that fat guy running around. Anything goes, Nikos. It's the same as when Rand talked about it in the 70s.
Okay, look, 1988, I think it was, Ron Paul ran with the Libertarian Party. At least you knew what the guy was standing for. When I hear Gary Johnson, or when I see that the guy running with him is William Weld, and I see his political record, I don't even know what these guys stand for. So I cannot even criticize their ideas because it's not there. It is this amalgam of a bit of left libertarian, open borders, bleeding hard libertarianism, then also maybe a bit of lip service to, but also free market and free trade is good. So I don't even know what's there. That's why I'm not.
Rand called it anarchism. Do you think it's not? Do you think that they are anarchists? By and
no,
large?
I don't. Because
a lot of the.
Here's why I disagree with you on that. because again, with anarcho-capitalism, at least the serious one, there is a line of ideas that you can understand, you can criticize, you can say, Rothbard believed this, or Mises Institute stood for this, I disagree because of this. When I see a Libertarian Party candidate says, I'm not going to be the one who's going to make the Libertarian Party the party which is for discrimination by private companies, I'm like, who is there? What's happening here? So what are your principles then? What are your foundations based on which you view the world? Are you just a conservative who is better than Trump? Or are you a liberal who is better than the Democratic Party? Like, oh, we stand in the middle. That's why I think this party is gonna be irrelevant. Because the first problem I see is that they don't have a signature of what their ideas are. Not that their ideas are bad. They don't even have ideas in a particular philosophy.
Yeah, I think another useful way to think about this is when you approach philosophy and you approach ethics, you start with values. The issue of values is so central and it's so fundamental. The farther back you can remember anything in life, you kind of go back to the earliest possible memories and you can sort of try to remember, okay, I like this object, I don't like that one, or here's what I think of this object, here's what I think of that one. And so much of philosophy kind of traces back to that, and that's so first-handed and personal. And when we try to deal with philosophy at all minus values, it becomes a recipe for disaster. So yeah, it is true that politics minus, lower branches of philosophy is a recipe for disaster. But also remember, philosophy itself, just talking about philosophy minus values, gets you nowhere. So, and can lead anywhere. So remember, values is an important word to have in your vocabulary. And so when we look at capitalism, we have the word values so deeply embedded, starting with kind of what do I want? What do I like? What do I want to create, produce? And, finally at a certain stage, when I reach sort of mental adulthood as well as physical adulthood, I need political freedom. I want to be free to produce, and I can bring like a very mature adult presence into the discussion of liberty, whereas obviously that's not what we saw in Jonathan's clip that he keeps bookmarked for any occasion.
Can I say something else on values? Listen to this one. Now, this is a secondary presentation. So, Dr. Jorgensen, if this is wrong, I apologize. But it says Jorgensen opposes embargoes, economic sanction, and is blah blah. She supports armed neutrality. Here's my problem with that. First of all, why you oppose embargoes? I support someone who is for values should support embargoes in evil countries. Why being in favor of armed neutrality? If Turkey attacks Greece, there shouldn't be armed neutrality, right? So both of you are your allies in NATO. So you should say one is the good side, one is the bad side. Let's not start who is who. I mean, I don't want to create international objectivist crisis, but here's the issue of the lack of values. Jonathan.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're surprised about Jorgensen's response here, but I'll share a screen once again, Nikos. I mean, this was an interaction actually I had with another Twitter account of mine with the so-called libertarian in chief. Ayn Rand always talked about libertarians ripping off her material. The so-called libertarian chief quoted himself, "Without property rights, you have nothing." And as I said, Rand's the one who said, "Without property rights, no other rights are possible." He of course said it's, sounds like a whole nother a quote than him. But your point is that there is no consistent philosophy to libertarianism. It is anything goes, as I talked about. And she cautioned, this is back in 1972, I'm quoting Miss Rand, quote, "Do not join the wrong ideological groups or movements in order to do something." By ideological in this context, I mean groups or movements proclaiming to be vaguely generalized, undefined, and usually contradictory political goals. And she specifically mentions the libertarian hippies. So look, I mean, it's earlier as we think is a common kind of objectivist ideology. We all wish that we could just elect the right politicians and all of a sudden everyone would believe in free markets, liberty, individual rights, but they don't believe in that. So once again, I go back to that idea is our responsibility is Jorgensen has zero chance. People are not interested in even the small amount of her ideas, which are even potentially free markets. So to identify and to align yourself with these complete freak shows, with this naked fucking fat guy running around saying anything goes, to say, oh yeah, objectivism is libertarianism, is to just spoil everything I think that Ayn Rand created and worked for and differentiated to make what hopefully we stand for something special and unique.
I have a couple thoughts here. First of all, yeah, the way that libertarians end up like pacifists and stuff, and they eat the not only that, but the equivalence they draw between free countries and dictatorships is like, how can these guys how can anyone say they have anything to do with objectivism? And there's disagreement among objectivists of when to go to war and how to deal with dictatorships or anything like that. But to just draw a moral equivalency between free countries, semi-free countries, and brutal dictatorships is something that
John McAfee
libertarians are notorious for. But what comes to mind, especially that I want to bring up, Jonathan, I've been an increasing voice of prudence and temperance. I've been, I used to be what they called a firebrand. I'm rumored to have murdered libertarians in the name of the truth. There's no truth to those rumors. But I used to be that guy who would meet a libertarian and say, "You stole everything from Ayn Rand." But hold on, let's slow this down a little bit. It is true that the original libertarians, who literally some of them knew Rand and studied with her and even acted like they agreed with her, a lot of them ripped her off. But listen, about a week ago, I was interviewed by a channel called Neo Austrians, and it's a couple of guys who are like free market guys, as you can tell by their name, who have increasingly moved away from anarchy and been exploring objectivism and even showing some enthusiasm about objectivism. And they're like, one of them mid-20s, one of them still in high school. And I was thinking as I'm talking to them, if I had come across these guys a couple of years ago, or someone else might have come across them, might have said, "Oh, you guys, you just stole a bunch of stuff from Ayn Rand," whereas they had never heard of Ayn Rand, right? Now, the guy you were tweeting at, Jonathan, he's older than them, but not that much older than them. So I guess we need to sort of pick our battles. It is true that if not for Ayn Rand, this guy on Twitter never would have probably said that. Like, he probably heard it and it kind of sat in his subconscious, and then he later said something very similar to it. But to kind of tweet at him, "Oh, no wonder Ayn Rand hates you guys," I guess how does that really help when that guy, he in his mind, he didn't steal it from Rand? And I guess I'm sort of trying to caution a little bit, and I'm trying to make sure we don't end up replacing ideas with reality and accusing all libertarians of ripping off Ayn Rand, whereas in reality, most of them, they don't even realize where a lot of their rhetoric came from. So I guess maybe there's a little bit of food for thought there from the sort of Zen master, new school yoga objectivist that I've become.
Well, I mean, it's as you said, Rucka, you're right. It's ultimately about education. And I wish there was a shortcut. And Nikos, I mean, I love your perspective on this as well. I mean, I wish there was a shortcut to get us to this, to achieve the type of societies and world that I think we know we're all able to. There is no shortcut. And when you see the type of anarchism, I believe that from what I see from the so-called Libertarian Party and the Libertarian movement, it's just certainly nothing that I would want to be associated with. And you say, well, what about on particular issues? Can we so-called partner with the Libertarian movement on issues about getting rid of licensing, getting rid of minimum wage? I mean, I say yes, I mean, on particular issues, but to call oneself, to identify oneself as a libertarian, to be part of that anything goes movement, I just don't see that it's changed from when Rand talked about it in the 70s. I don't think anything's different. And Rucka, you're right. I don't have that guy's naked dance on a bookmark, but the fact that happened, and that happens all the time in the so-called libertarian movement, and that even some of the anarchists that I see parading through Portland and Seattle, etc., would call themselves libertarian. I mean, you want to be part of that?
No, I don't. But also remember the Libertarian Party, they're a political group running for office, whereas the Libertarian movement is more of like a conglomerate of various think tanks and stuff. We may get some valuable economic statistics from an organization like Cato or whatever, and may have some common ground on concrete issues with some of them. But the Libertarian Party is the subject of today's episode, and that is a specific party running for office, which when Rand talked about publicity seekers, I think she was talking about people running for office.
Yeah, and John McAfee is your best example. I mean, John McAfee, I believe, he wasn't the candidate in 2016, but like
he was, he wanted to be a candidate, and actually he made some noise. He had a good YouTube video with Steve Jobs' quote, "Here's to the rebels" or whatever, which also featured Ayn Rand. So that was the only memorable moment. But yeah, actually, there were some interesting people in 2016. It was Austin Peterson. It was, but from all these people who end up winning, Gary Johnson. Anyway, another question that I'm going to just throw it there, and because we haven't got time. Does it even make sense to talk about libertarian? So if under one category you have Cato and Boas, you have Hans Hermann Hoppe, you have bleeding heart libertarians. Do these people have much in common? I don't know. Anyway, we need to wrap it up, gentlemen. So thank you very much. Hopefully we made some fruitful criticism of the libertarian notion or party or whatever. So yeah, it's not gonna be easy, but let's fight the battle of ideas, and let's hope we're gonna be in a better position, and definitely better than the things that we discussed today. So from me and from your co-hosts, all the best.